And we begin this hour with the latest developments on the ice storm that left so many Canadians without heat and light. After 8 days, the power is back on for most people in Ontario, and the number of households off the grid in Toronto is down significantly to 6,000.
I think it's fair today to describe it as we're now hour by hour. In other words, I can see it, I'm probably standing on it, and we can see the finish line ahead of us. And it's now. And so over
the head of Toronto Hydro sounded an optimistic note at a news conference held a short while ago. Hydro crews are working flat out to restore service to those still without power. It is the last push to get everyone back online after a difficult week of cold houses and closed off streets. Toronto's Deputy Mayor Norm Kelly joins us now with the very latest on the situation. So, Mr. Kelly, we've been using 6,000 as the latest number of people still without power. We know that number changes constantly. Is there an update?
It does, because this morning at an earlier press conference in North York with the Premier and others, Anthony Haines used 7,000 as the number that to illustrate the gap that still remains.
So 6,000.
I'm glad it's down to 6, and I think fingers crossed that could be reduced to 0 or close to it by the end of the day.
End of the day today.
We're hoping for that.
So the hydro crews are making enough progress that almost hour by hour we're seeing progress?
That's right. But this is what makes it awkward. And I was out yesterday all day in northwestern Scarborough, and I had a chance to talk with a number of crews that I bumped into during that day. And they pointed out that when they arrive at a site, it could be a home, one house that has the problem, but the damage could be such that it would take them 4 hours or more to do it. And a lot of the connections in the older communities are in the rear of the house. So it's the work that is remaining is very laborious, and they're coping with it as quickly and as effectively as they can.
We know as well that among the 6,000 still without power, there are quite a number of them who have standpipes outside their homes that have been damaged. And it sounds like what the drill is, they have to fix the standpipe before the power can be reconnected. Is there anything the city can do to provide assistance, even financial assistance?
In a previous briefing, I learned that if the crew arrives and there's not a lot to do, then they would be able to make the connection. But before they do anything, they have to make sure that someone's home. And if no one is home at the time, they can't do anything, because to restore power would be to restore power in an unknown context. Yesterday, for example, in one of the communities, I followed 4 fire trucks rushing to a house, only to find out that the issue was that the power had been turned on in the neighborhood, but the person's alarm system hadn't been turned off.
I still want to go back to the standpipe issue, though. If people are there and they're talking to the hydro crews and they're saying, we're ready to turn on the power, but you got to fix your standpipe first, that's out of pocket. They've got to deal with a contractor. So I'm just wondering if the city is at least considering providing some sort of assistance to them.
Compensation is one of the issues that we're going to be looking at next. The first part was of this exercise was to restore power. The second part of the exercise, and it involved the tree debris, was to look over the horizon and realize that there's a humongous task awaiting for us. The third part of this is what I would call the step-down phase, where you begin to contract your warming centers and the services that you offer, and as well look into compensation, food cards to people who need assistance. They've lost a considerable amount of food.
The province has announced that. Is the city playing a role in that? The gift cards on the groceries?
We're coordinating it right now, and after leaving you, I'll be talking with the people that are trying to arrange that. And then finally, the compensation from the province, or the financial aid from the province. Let's put it that way.
As I understand it, Mayor Ford has called for a special council meeting to discuss the issue of compensation. Is council already behind this? I mean, is there unanimity?
Well, I've been spending the last, I spent last night and this morning discussing this issue with Councillor Matlow, who initially raised it, and I thank him very much for doing so, and talking with the city manager, because it sounds simple, but the provincial legislation is written in a very general way. So we've spent a lot of time trying to get a common interpretation by the province and the city of what the legislation means. So this is the behind-the-scenes work that my office is involved with, and I think that we'll hopefully, and the city manager and I wanted to make sure that we had time enough to prepare a report for council. And the 10th, we had 2 dates, the 10th and the 13th.
Sure.
I believe the mayor chose the former. We're just going to have to work behind the scenes a little faster to get that base report done for that meeting of council.
We're already hearing an initial amount of cost somewhere between $8 and $10 million. Is that pretty much what the likely amount is when you make the case to the provincial government that this is the kind of compensation the city is seeking?
Those are the working numbers right now. But as you indicated earlier in your remarks, this is a scenario whose numbers keep changing.
Right.
And we'll just have to keep up on those on a day-to-day basis.
You talk about the humongous task ahead, and one of the things I'm sure that people are already doing is looking at the damage that has been done to the tree canopy. Any ideas yet as to what we're dealing with there?
I noticed that when I was out last Tuesday morning through portions of Scarborough. It was incredible, the debris, not only on the public portion, but on the private one as well. So when I got back to City Hall, I contacted the forestry staff, and I said, you know what, we're so caught up with the hydro issue that we've tended to think too much in the present. And I said to him, we've got to think over the horizon, guys. Here's what I saw today. Here are the photographs that I took, and I think even though we're still working on the hydro issue, we have to begin thinking now of planning for the removal of the tree debris.
As I understand it as well, there was budget cuts to tree maintenance. In retrospect, might that have been a mistake given the challenge you're faced with now?
Obviously, yeah.
Can you change it?
Well, we'll try.
So looking at some of the other things that presumably for future reference would be room for improvement. We know that some fire stations went out of power for a period of time. Same with some police stations. Should every fire and police station have a generator at hand to deal with this in future?
Well, you know, one of the things that held us back initially was that our command center at Don Mills went down as well. And we struggled to put together the network that would allow us to respond quickly and effectively. One of my major jobs as the chair of the emergency committee is to make sure that we analyze our response as thoroughly and as objectively as possible. And what you've raised is a very good point, and there are a number of them that have been raised by the media, by our own people, and by constituents who have sent an incredible number of emails to my office and the offices of other councillors. So I want the residents of Toronto to know that no stone will be left unturned. We'll try to make as thorough an analysis as possible and make sure that we provide the resources and the perspective that councillors at another time may be able to use more effectively than we have this time.
I'm sure that in any kind of analysis, you would deal with the decision-making process, internal and external communication. Help me understand what the decision-making process has been so far. You chair the emergency committee, so your responsibilities, the kind of leadership that you have provided throughout this has been what exactly?
Well, I look at it from the perspective of a council meeting, and if members of council stand up and have someone to hold accountable, that person is me. And the first thing I did in that position when I was informed on Sunday morning of the scope and the impact of this ice storm was to ask to speak to the Premier of the province.
I find that interesting that you were the one to do that and not the mayor. Just explain again the protocol by which the deputy mayor would be reaching out to the Premier and not the mayor.
Well, as you know, we made a number of changes at council to the responsibilities and authority of the mayor.
So he just is out of the mix.
And those were transferred to the office of the deputy mayor. And I have to tell everyone that the premier was very quick and open in her response. It was, Norm, anything that we can do to help you, we will certainly do that. And within hours, the senior staff on our side were contacted by the premier's senior staff, and negotiations began.
For you, at any point, did you think, you know, the situation is such that we may want to seriously consider this a state of emergency?
Well, up front, that was my advice. And the mayor had a very specific, provincially determined authority to declare an emergency,
So
or if you will, not to do that.
So you wanted to declare a state of emergency?
Up front, I did, and for a number of reasons. At that time, we weren't sure of the scope of the assistance that we needed. And secondly, I thought psychologically it was important to let the people of Toronto know that we took this very, very seriously, that this really was an emergency in our eyes.
So I'm confused here because I talked to Rob Ford yesterday and he said never at any point did we consider this to be a state of emergency.
Well,
what's going on?
I would respectfully question that perspective.
So for you, what responsibilities did Rob Ford have throughout this particular crisis?
My understanding is that he had that one constitutional, if you will, authority to declare an emergency. He has, on his own, been the public face in many ways, holding press conferences. And that's helped, given his high profile personally, has helped focus public attention on these matters.
I do have to tell you, though, it's most unusual for the Premier to hold regular updates, and the CEO of Toronto Hydro is there, and then for Mayor Ford to hold his own updates, and the CEO of Toronto Hydro is there as well. It seems, if not confusing, a little redundant, is it not?
I don't think so. The mayor has obviously a profile and a following. I think when the mayor says to the media, I want to talk to you, they go there. So it's important that he be kept up to date. As chair of the emergency committee, it's important that I'm kept up to date. And the premier, it's important for her to liaison closely with the city. And so you have the same core of experts communicating with all three participants.
We know that tomorrow, 8 a.m. Toronto time, Mayor Ford is holding a news conference. Do you have any idea of what he wishes to discuss or announce? Or?
No.
So, post-mortem meeting. Obviously, there is a consensus that it will be good to have a full discussion, analysis of everything that worked and didn't work. Do you chair that meeting?
Yes.
You would chair that meeting?
That's my job going forward, is to make sure that the tree debris initiative works quickly and effectively, that we work out the details of compensation and financial aid, to supervise the step down of the facilities and the services we offer already, and fourthly, to determine the impact of all of this on the budget that I'm shepherding through council right now.
Would Rob,
so lots to do.
Lots to discuss at that particular meeting. And would Rob Ford be invited to that meeting?
Well, I think that if he were, that would blur the lines of accountability. The important thing is to have clearly defined lines of accountability, so that when members of council or the media or residents have a question and they want someone in front of them who's accountable, that they know who that person is.
Mr. Kelly, appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.